G'day, Ron, and welcome to episode 130 of the TradeMate Sports Betting Podcast. Today I'm joined by Joonas Karppinen, a former trader for Bet365 and founder of Edge Alerter. Joonas, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Alex. Good to be here, mate.
Good to have you on, mate. As I mentioned, you're a former worker for Bet365. I think we can kind of work in chronological order here, and that's kind of where you got started in the betting industry. Maybe just explain to our listeners and viewers, how you got to working for Bet365 and if you had any experience in betting before that.
Yeah, sure. Happy to talk about that. So my background, actually, out of high school, I pursued a pro golf career, went over to the States on a golf scholarship and I gave that a crack. But in my early 20s, realized that the future probability distribution of success doesn't look too great. So I decided to just go down a quant field. I studied quant finance at Sydney Uni, and I'd always been really analytical with whatever I was doing. So, and I'd always at the back of my mind thought trading might be interesting for me. So I did a quant finance degree there. I was lucky enough to get a part-time job at a hedge fund whilst at uni, and that kind of started the whole trading thing for me. And from there, really, I worked at a few, primarily in options market making, which is essentially like bookmaking, but in the financial markets. And that was a great run for about 5 years in that game. Did some prop trading as well in and amongst that as well. And then the markets really quietened down, really low vol, super competitive. So a lot of the fat came out of the options game in the mid 2010s. And so I was kind of looking around at what might be next. And I noticed Bet365 had just opened up an office in Sydney where I'm based. And I thought, you know what, I think there's probably something I can add there. Up until that point, I'd done a little bit of betting, especially in golf and Formula One. They were kind of my niches. Given my background in golf and given my background having been born in Finland, I had a natural interest in Formula One. So got in touch with them, and then long story short, started there pretty soon after as an in-play trader and more like a generalist, and also as things evolved, I got more into golf. So I was essentially the head of in-play golf for the Asian time zone there, and that was a good stint at Bet365. Very interesting. Enjoyed it. Then I was there for about 5 years, and 3 years ago left to start Edge Alerter soon after. And that's really the 2-minute version.
Yeah, we'll get into Edge Alerter soon, but anything that shocked you or surprised you? Pretty common question that you probably get working on the other side of the fence. I mean, there's millions of people backing to beat the bookies, but there's not many people working for them. So anything that people might be shocked by or just interesting?
Probably as a general thing that surprised me was the amount of interest on totals betting. I really never had any idea that people would actually care so much for totals in sport. But I guess it's just a different view that you can have on a game. It could be a weather play or just a vol play. That's probably a more general comment. What else? Probably in-play betting is obviously, a lot of your viewers will know that it's Bet365's bread and butter. They have an amazing in-play product. So given that the flows in in-play sport were quite astounding, I didn't think that there'd be that much interest. And probably even further to that, even on the low level sport, the flows are quite big in play. So you might have a sort of a Div 2, Div 3 game, whether it's soccer or tennis or basketball. No one really cares pre-game because it's just random team A versus random team B. But once that's in play in the run, it actually gets quite exciting to bet on it, even if you're not watching it. You know, one team might be up 20-0 and you're betting on the race to 25, $1 or whatever it might be. So that's probably something that surprised me as well.
I assume most of it's automated, but what's it like? I mean, I assume you're looking after multiple games live at the same time. What's that kind of like, and how much are you relying on automation?
Yeah, good question. Probably depends, or it varies from sport to sport. Some games, some sports, some markets are really easy to price. Like take tennis as an example. It's quite easy to model. You've got a lot of data. You can just really run multicolor simulations on the future outcomes. It's very clean to model. But then you go down the chain into something like a golf, and like try and price golf up in the last round when you've got 30 players in the mix, and you don't have perfect information. You don't even know. You might not even know what the true leaderboard is, let alone if someone's hit it out of bounds on the 17th. So that can get tricky. So it really comes down to the sport. So, but if you're running, if you're on that end of the spectrum of modeling is easy and the maths is quite pure, then you can obviously handle more games, more markets at once.
And I'm sure you dealt with a range of customers, mate, both square or I guess punters and sharp bettors. Can you give any insight into, I guess, the main difference or traits or bets that you kind of see between those, just distinguish those kinds of bettors?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, ultimately it comes down to how confident you are in the price, number one, whether you're betting into a sharp or laying a sharp or laying a square. So ultimately it comes down to how confident you are in the price. There's I think one mistake or one thing that people miss with the whole square versus sharp thing is it's not always black and white. It's the way I'd look at it coming from the financial markets is, if you're considering someone at sharp, would you, as an investment manager, back that participant to bet for you? Because essentially, if you're framing them as a sharp and then you're going to move the prices whenever they bet, you're respecting them that much that you'd actually invest in them. So that's kind of the one way to look at it. And again, it's not binary, yes or no, and things evolve as well. And so I'll give you a financial markets example as well. Like when I worked in options market making, there are parts of the volatility surface that are really liquid. And you could consider them kind of like the EPL markets, which there's a lot of flow. It's kind of easy to know where the market is. Whereas, more niche markets are harder to price. In the financial markets, if you've got someone like Goldman Sachs buying down 30% puts in an index that 6-12 months out, and they're bidding that, they're buying there in size, and it's well and truly through where you'd have that part of the volatility surface, you sort of look at that and go, how do you profile them? What's their track record, given your back book, if you like, of observing them? Whereas if it's a REIT, and obviously if you respect their flows, you're going to move your curves there, move your price, which is obviously what we do in betting. Whereas if they're a retail broker who are just, you got some high net worths who are just throwing darts around all day long, and they've built up that track record, then you might not respect them as much. So you're just trying to get little leans from all of these little bits of information. So that's kind of how I look at sharp versus square. And then the question is then, what do you do with that information? And obviously you respect flows based on the way that you've profiled them.
Yeah, was there ever any conversations about, I guess, if you've profiled someone over a long amount of time, you've realised, this bloke's pretty sharp on golf. He's going to beat us in the long term. Was there ever any question of, maybe we use this guy for information so we can adjust our numbers accordingly for the rest of the market? Was there ever anything like that, or is it always just black and white? If they're going to get limited if they're too sharp.
You definitely use them for information. Some of them you would let them bet max clip or the same limits as others would. But if they are just literally skimming from you week in, week out, month in, month out, you do consider limiting certain punters. It's just something that bookmakers can do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move along to Edge Alerter then, mate. I guess give a general introduction into what Edge Alerter does for our audience, because a lot of people might not have heard of them before.
Yeah, sure. So Edge Alerter, I started it just under 3 years ago, and I saw an opportunity in the Australian market, especially in the racing industry, whereby the bookmakers have a lot of bonus bet back promotions for second and third. So I thought surely there's some big edge here, especially given the quantity of them. So I was well aware that things aren't scalable to the nth degree, having worked on the other side of the fence. But given the quantity, I thought there must be something here. So long story short, worked with some devs to build a model in racing that identifies true value, or very close to true value, and just takes that, identifies that in races with the promotions, and tips that to members. And members get those sent in real time. They all come in the last few minutes just before the jump. That's where the biggest opportunity is. The bookies have the lowest margin. Price and volume data has the most predictive edge in that last couple of minutes, just because the liquidity is so big. And thirdly, our tipping services, we're able to sort of keep it under the radar as well a little bit when we're betting so late, as opposed to betting during low volume times. So that's on the tipping side, and that's performing at 31% profit on turnover. We actually can't find a better performing one around. We've got edge actually without the promo insurance. It's one of the common questions. What about if you take the insurance of the promos out? We do have about 5 or 6% of edge there. So we're finding true value there. Then over time, we've sort of, that was the starting point. Then over time, we've evolved into now same game multis as well. We tip those, a lot of promotions out in same game multis. And from a mathematical standpoint, same game multis are quite interesting. To date, multis have been relatively easy to price because of their independence. So back team A over there versus team B over there. And often they're independent, whereas with a same game multi, you've got positive, like really strong positive and negative correlations with a lot of the markets. So what we've built some models around working out what the implied correlations the bookies have versus what we perceive or estimate to be the true correlations. So you've got that correlation play, and you've got the margin game as well. So long story short, we've built some same game multi, a tipping service around that as well, and that wins at about 23% profit on turnover. So yeah, that's kind of the tipping side. The second part of Edge Alerter is on the educational side of, we'll probably go into the tipping industry in Australia in a second, maybe even more globally. There are lots of issues with the industry. We've done a lot of research into it, but the second thing that we do with Edge Alerter is on the educational side. So I'm really trying to just bring over my insights as a professional trader over to members. So how do you quantify edge? What's the mindset that you need? How do you stake mathematically, optimally, or close to? And also my experiences at Bet365. So how do you what are the important things to know there so that you can make this a long-term thing as well?
Yeah, you mentioned that, your tips, or at least in the horse racing, that they generated a 5 to 6% ROI just straight from the tips, not from getting that insurance from the bonus, which is quite startling when you think that with the bonuses it's a 30% ROI. So you're talking about a 25%
profit on turnover.
Yeah, okay.
Clear, profit on turnover, not ROI. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So that's it's quite a big edge that you're getting just from betting into those bonus markets. Like, how do you think you could almost bet blindly into these bonus markets where you get your bonus money, or you get your money back in bonus bets if you come second or third in the race, or you got the same game multi kind of promotions? I'm not saying you could have an edge. Maybe you could just even be like a neutral expected value better, or maybe even just a slight negative EV better, just looking to have a bit of fun. Can you give any kind of perspective on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you could throw darts into these promotions, and you're betting into like 112, 116% books in the racing. You're probably betting into about 110% in a same game multi if you're lucky with the 3 legs. Even if you've just found top price and got the correlations right, you could probably throw darts around here and there. And if you're converting your bonuses into cash at maybe 60, 70%, you're probably about break even. That's our estimate. So you could just throw darts and convert at 60 or 70 and you break even. So that's better than losing at 5 or 6%. But
if you're just looking to have some fun, aren't you? Like if you're just a standard weekend punter looking to have a bit of fun, it could be just the way to go to bet into bonus markets all the time.
You might as well. It's just a bit of edge there for you. You've just got to play the game of sustainability as well, so that it's perceived as abusing those, and that's part of the system that we teach as well. Looking like a square punter, but actually taking plenty off the top. And our members average about 600 to 800 Aussie dollars a week.
Yeah. Are there, I mean, there are obvious ways to try and disguise this, but yeah, can you maybe share a few ways that you've gone about, trying to disguise this activity? Because I guess it's probably quite easy to spot after a while if you're just getting a load of bonus bets back into your account all the time.
Look, the simple things are the pretty obvious ones when you think about them. But if you're going to open up a new account, it's reasonable to assume that the counterparty on the other side, the bookmaker, is going to be looking at your account a little bit more closely, just to identify, just to try and sort of feel you out. Same with a CFD broker. If you open up an account with them, there are ways to take advantage of those markets, but they want to kind of see a bit of a track record. That's kind of starting point number one, and then, but on an ongoing basis, you sort of need to mix in some normal flows as well into your betting.
Yeah, and I guess the second part is placing those bonus bets once you get it back. What's your process like, and are there like certain sports that you try and target to place your bonus bets on?
Yeah, good question. Yes, there are two. So racing bonus, the bonus bet tips that we get the most success with are racing and golf. So on the racing side, I guess the first thing I should say is with a bonus bet, you don't keep the stake. Many of your members will know this. So from a mathematical perspective, if you're betting into true odds, where say $10 when true price is $10, the loss on conversion to bonus bets is the inverse of the price. So you're bleeding 10% on the conversion. If you're betting $10 and 20, it's you're bleeding 5%. So you need to be looking for opportunities in that $10 to $15 mark in range, if you like. So that's kind of starting point. And then where do you find close to true odds? That's always the hard part. But in racing, we find some really good opportunities in that $8 to $15 price range. We've got some strong theories around why the opportunities are amazing there. It's primarily due to the markets being really skewed due to so many promotions, and their bookies are sort of opening themselves up in a certain part of the curve. We've got the track record to actually show that we win at 32% profit on turnover if you just back up bonus bet tips with cash. So that's been pretty phenomenal. That's off a sample of about 600. I think golf is really interesting. I mentioned at the start that I pursued a pro golf career early on, so I've got a bit of knowledge in that. As a player at 365, I was, as I mentioned, the head of in-play golf for the Asian time zone. So I've got kind of some insights from working on the other side of the fence there. So golf, you've got fields of, as many will know, 100, 140 players. So naturally, you're going to get some pretty big price opportunities. And we've got a golf simulator model that basically looks to identify edge, especially between rounds. We find that the markets are quite fair pre-game, but then between rounds, we find some really good opportunities, again, in that $10 to $20 range often.
Yeah, and you mentioned same game multis a little bit earlier, and you went into that a little bit. Can you go a bit deeper and I guess explain? Because I guess most people will look at same game multis and think, all right, we've got to get three legs in there, and the problem with that is we're putting three margins in there. So I guess the general perception with it is like accumulators, isn't it? So the more the more legs you put in, the more margin the bookmakers have against you. So how are you? Yeah, I guess combating against that. And I think you mentioned trying to bet on correlated markets, but do they, I guess, take a bit of the price away when you're betting into those correlated markets?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. And so with the same game multis, two parts from a pricing perspective. One, as you mentioned, is the independent price and trying to beat the margin there. Trying to beat three independent legs with the same bookie, it's tough. But the second part to the pricing in the same game multi is the correlation. And to be clear, we actually look at the negative correlation opportunities, because the research we've done is suggesting that the broad market bets on positively correlated markets. And what that means is the bookies obviously anticipate the flow. Their models are leaning this way and we're going the other way. And this is just something that we've picked up through our analysis, and we're always looking for sort of new tweaks and angles. So that's kind of the key there, that we're looking for negative correlation plays. You can't just blindly bet into them. You've got to look around and model a few things, but that's where we're seeing the big opportunity right now.
Yeah, and overall, do you see bookmakers increasing their promotions month on month, or are you starting to see with the emergence of services like yourself that they're thinking, all right, well, we better tone this down now?
We've never seen more. I mean, we started Edge Alert, as I said, about 2.5 years ago, and the typical Saturday race day, for example, you'd have kind of the tier one bookies covering 8 races, 10 races. You mix them all together and you might have 12, 14 races covered on a Saturday. These days we're averaging 30 to 35 races covered per Saturday. So that's just ramped. I think the competition in the Australian market's just such that this is just kind of a glorious period. Everyone's trying to acquire and retain customers. So we've never seen more. Same game multi-promos, they're only quite new. Even you'll notice a lot of the tier 2, tier 3 bookies there, they don't even have a product yet. They're trying to get their head around specifically the correlation. Anyone can price an independent multi. When you got correlation, it's a bit harder. So that's quite new. We've never seen more. We're in lockdown in most of Australia at the moment, and people are betting more as well. I don't know if that plays into it. Maybe the bookmakers are sort of more likely to do weekly promotions, which they are. We've actually never seen more weekday promotions. So it's a glorious time right now. There probably will come a point where the market starts consolidating a little bit, but look, this has been going for 5 years, just flooding, just the market flooded with all this opportunity, and it'll be many years before it tightens up to any meaningful extent. Just on your point of how do the bookies view sort of sharp services like ours? Like, look, our members love what we do, and many of them stick around for a very long time. But we're a drop in the ocean in comparison to the market size. You've got about 4 million in Australia, about 4 million active racing and sports bettors, and we've got a handful of 300 or 400 members and growing. But even if we get to 2,000, 2,000 divided by 4 million, it's kind of a drop in the ocean, especially when we're betting at the right times as well to maintain that account sustainability, which is part of the system.
Yeah, no, well said, mate. You've worked for Bet365, like I've said. You've worked on both sides of the fence. You've probably been familiar with tipsters your whole time working in the betting industry too. I guess you guys are one of the good guys. What's it like? Yeah, okay. What's your overall assessment of the tipping industry in Australia? I know you've done lots of research and got some interesting facts for us, which I'm sure people will love to hear. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, when I just quick preface before I go into that research is the way I sort of try to approach Edge Alerter from day one, and I thought it'd kind of be par for the course, is approach it almost like a hedge fund. And instead of your members being perceived as just subscribers, they're actually unit holders in your hedge fund. And for them to maintain that unit, not withdraw their fund or not redeem their funds out of that fund, you need to perform. You need to be transparent. You don't need to give away all your secrets, but you need to have some transparency around your results. Credibility is a big thing, and you need to communicate to your unit holders what the process is, that what opportunities you're looking for next. You need to explain bad runs. That's how I've approached it. So that's kind of how I thought that would be par for the course. But as we found out, and as you mentioned, we did some research just a few months ago, and I've just got some numbers here. There are about 120 tipping services in Australia, and you've got about 800,000 Australians following them. So about 20%. I mentioned 4 million active sport and racing bettors in Australia. So about 20% of those seeking assistance from tipping services. It's quite a meaningful number. You've got 20% of them claiming to be Australia's best.
That's
so there's no, it's a good one. Only 10% provide a track record. Again, if in the financial markets, it's track record is everything, and transparency is everything. And for only 10% to have one is quite astounding. And to add to that, many of that 90% claim to have found some sort of edge, yet have no track record. 35% are affiliates. That's on a tipping service number perspective. but about 500,000, when you sort of nut down all the numbers, you've got about 500,000 Australians are following services with either no track record or they're affiliates for the bookmakers. Now, going to affiliates now, and it's a big problem in this game. So affiliates generally, many of your audience would know, get paid for referral business, just in business in general. In the betting game, there are two affiliate models, but the most common one is a profit share of future losses. So if Alex, you come to a dodgy alerter and I say, come on in, Alex, it's a free service, just sign up to the bookie A using this link. And then you're like, looks like a pretty good deal to me, free tips. As soon as you sign up to that, I will get 30% of your future losses into perpetuity. Very common affiliate deal with the bookies. Obviously, there's a big problem there because I'm also tipping you. So there's a huge misalignment of incentives there. So a lot of our members have been burnt by services. As I said, you got 800,000 Australians and growing quickly following these things, and a lot of them are just outright scandalous. So we're trying to bring this out and just educate people out there on sort of the traps that are. The other thing I'd say just quickly is there's a really critical assumption many tipsters make in their marketing documentation, and sometimes they're transparent about it, but it gets missed by most readers. It's around the assumption of top price. So there are some high profile services out there that are their results are extremely sensitive to the assumption of top price. So whilst their track record may look good, you can't actually achieve the top price 95% of the time. And when you take that out, you've actually got no edge a lot of the time. Again, back to the financial markets, I often get, in the past, have had quant trading teams trying to get funding from me or from the firm. And you're looking at a track record, you're trying to find, go through it all and work out, is it statistically significant? Are these edges likely to persist? What are the assumptions, etc.? So lots of traps out there. Long story short, lots of the bookie. It's tough for a bettor, right? You've got an industry where the bookmakers have a lot of power over you with the way they profile customers, with the way they can hang bets and etc. Lots of things. They do a lot of. They've got a lot of power there, and then you've got this subset of those who go out and seek help, and then they're just jammed with all these traps in that subset of the industry as well. So it's tough for the bettors out there.
Yeah, 100%. I've followed many tipsters myself where they'll just have such a big audience where they'll tip something at 1.8, let's say, and you log on a couple of hours later and the price is down to 1.5. So it's like, you don't get that sort of shift unless people have continued to back it at 1.7 and 1.6. So it's kind of it's crazy that. Yeah, I guess these are still happening. You kind of stunned that people will pay for a tipping service when they provide absolutely no record at all. Like that just seems absolutely baffling to me. I can half understand signing up to someone that's free with affiliate links and stuff like that because people it's easy for them to have no idea about what's going on there. But the record stuff is it's baffling.
Look, it's easy to. We're not. You got to remember this 800,000 out there, following these things. They're not all from a quantitative field. They're not all necessarily really astute within investments. It's easy to fall. It's easy to get taken down the garden path, I guess, through just a Facebook ad that pops up and suggests that they've won 3 of their last four tips, and it's easy to get sucked into these things. And when you see some profit numbers around, when they throw them around, even if they're made up, and then it's free. It's kind of like you can see why a lot of people do get taken in, if you like.
Hey, do you think there's any way we can change this at I don't know if there's like a regulation level where you can I guess stop these profit loss schemes, affiliate deals, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, I guess you can't really do much about people not providing a track record. I guess that's more common sense stuff. But yeah, I guess it seems slightly unethical that someone can make money off someone else's losses.
Yeah, rig side, I don't know. Maybe that'll happen at some point. I think my view is that there just needs to be just a push of education out around this. As I mentioned, we're working with some tier one media to sort of try and get the word out a little bit around the traps. As I said just before the show that people are betting more and more in lockdown than ever. You've got the bookmakers doing all these, with all this power. You've got tipping services doing what they're doing. We're just working, I think, focusing on the educational side, I'd say, on that.
Yeah, interesting what you say about getting in touch with media people, because I mean we've had the same thing where we've tried to I guess educate the tier one media, or at least something close to that in Europe and the UK, and a lot of the time they can't really report on any of the stuff that we're talking about because they're also affiliated.
They're in on it.
So what's it been like for you trying to approach these bigger media outlets in Australia?
Of the two key ones in Australia, one is well and truly in on it, as in they're big affiliates themselves. So they're a non-starter. So we're working with the other one, if you like. I mean, it is a bit of a shame, and that it's hard to get the word out, but I will just keep chipping away. But the other thing, so affiliates are it's an issue. The other thing I'd say is just on the educational side, you guys do a lot of education as well, and it's my view is that if you watch a lot of these, if you watch the races, watch sport, whenever people are talking about odds or outcomes, there's a lot of misinformation. There are a lot of traps out there, and a lot of things that actually don't make people more astute at betting. And I'll give you a really, really easy example that, and I don't mean to say that disparagingly, I'm just saying this is so common. You get Joe, the tipsters, and this might be on Sky Racing, bet of the day. My bet of the day is horse number 3. And you go, okay, what price? And they're like, no, it's my bet of the day. And you're like, and this is so common. It makes no sense, right? What price are you betting it at? Is it, unless it's a sure thing, which doesn't exist, what price are you doing? So those sorts of things, you got millions of people in Australia just bombarded with these sorts of insights from the market. So also trying to get some awareness and education around that, because I mean, statistical significance doesn't come naturally to most people, but trying to get more astute with numbers, because one thing that I find interesting is there are a lot of parallels, and I've drawn a few between the betting industry and the general investment industry. And I think if we can educate people to be more astute bettors and understand the traps and the game theory that's involved, that's going to help them in the general investment world as well.
Yeah, another one you can throw in there is like a win rate and stuff like that too. When you're talking about tips,
strike rate.
Strike rate. Yeah, I guess it's the same thing. Like, so I mean, if you tell me you've got a 55% win rate, it means absolutely nothing to me. Like, even if you say you got a 95% win rate, it absolutely means nothing at all.
It's amazing. One of our members was in touch with one of the big tipsters, and I won't name the name. They've got over 100,000 followers, and he was just asking them about their track record. And again, they've got over 100,000 followers, and they finally responded and said it's 72%. Like, he asked, what's your track record? They said 72%. The member said, what's 72%? Is that POT? It's not going to be profit on turnover. That's too high. But is it profit on turnover? Is it ROI? If so, over what time period? Is it strike rate? If so, what price, what average price are you getting, etc.? And this tipping service didn't respond to that. They simply banned that user from their page. So that's what's going on out there.
Yeah, no, it's a sad state of affairs, mate, and hopefully we've been talking about it for years. Hopefully, slowly but surely, we can start to eradicate these issues. Finally, mate, I mean, like I mentioned before, you've worked on both sides of the fence. I think I always like to finish off with, with a question about, I guess, general or simple ways that people can improve their betting, and you're someone that's been on both sides of the fence, so you've seen it from both sides, and sure you'll be able to provide some valuable insight there.
Yeah, good, fair question. I'd break it down into two parts. One is quantifying an edge, because that's at the end of the day, that's key. Can you quantify an edge that you've got? Just because it won last week and the week before might not mean that there's any edge in it. So work on quantifying something over a statistically significant time period. And then secondly, the stake sizing, which is absolutely critical. For some reason, humans have this natural tendency to overstake significantly. And I'm talking like multiples of 5 or 10 of what they should be. So trying to work out what's the right staking plan for that strategy. So those are really the two key parts that, in terms of a takeaway, how do you go out and apply that? I guess that's the slightly harder part. But what, for example, we do with Edge Alerter is we provide a framework of results and quantifying edge, etc. And we've built some models around not only forecasting future outcomes in terms of results in golf tournaments or races, but also in terms of P&L over one day, over 1 week, over 1 month. You guys do some simulation stuff, which is great too. But that, we hope, helps people appreciate that there are two parts to betting and trading, in fact, successfully. One is finding true edge, and secondly, staking accordingly.
Yeah, no, well said, mate. And thanks so much for coming on. Maybe just let people know where they can find you and Edge Alerter and all the good stuff you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So edgealerter.com, feel free to email us there, or you can message us on social media. Happy to give any of your followers here a free 1 week trial and free access to our 7-day betting course, which kind of goes through the basics of our system to give you a bit of a feel for things. You've got the opportunity to ask questions, and you'll see our system applied in real time as well there. So feel free to ask for that, and we'll get that set up for you.
Terrific stuff, mate. And thanks everyone else for listening. Please make sure you do a quick rate and review of the podcast if you're first time listening in, and subscribe to us wherever you listen to this podcast. And lastly, if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe, all the good stuff. It goes a long way. Thanks once again, Joonas, and we'll have to catch up again one day.
Thanks, Alex.